How's everybody doing? This is Quincy Carrier Live, where we talk about the Browns for about an hour and we give you everything that we got here. Let's start with the Browns here. Let's start with the Browns offense when we're talking about what happened on Sunday and kind of the fallout that's happened because of the offense on Sunday. So the Browns offense has been bad. I think we all know it's been bad, but I do think we need to contextualize just how bad it has been. See, the worst we felt about the Browns offense last year was when the Browns offense was starting PJ Walker in DTR, right? We would all agree that in 2023 and possibly since 2020, since Kevin has taken over the job as head coach of the Cleveland Browns, the least productive you have felt about a Cleveland Browns offense was during the stretch of time where they were starting DTR or PJ Walker or playing DTR or PJ Walker. I think everybody would agree with that. Well, that was the case. That was the case until 2024, Deshaun Watson. This offense in 2024 has been the worst the Browns offense has ever looked in the Stefanski era. If you compare it to the PJ Walker in DTR era, in these key numbers, right? First downs, total yardage, expected points in total points, the Browns offense is a bigger disaster by every single statistic. 90 first downs, which is 15 a game for Deshaun Watson. Compare that to PJ Walker in DTR, 111 first downs, 16.6 a game. They're getting edged out by them. 1,729 total yards for PJ Walker in DTR. Deshaun Watson this year, 1,441 yards. 240 yards a game. I want to put in context how bad that number is. Deshaun Watson has thrown the ball significantly more times than those two did. He's had more opportunities to get more yardage, and he's there. And that's why his expected point total on offense is lower than PJ Walker in DTR. He's minus 64 points. They're minus 62. 106 points in 6 games for PJ Walker, DTR, in the Browns offense. And remember, the Browns offense, when DTR and PJ Walker was playing, was dealing with way more injuries, right? No Nick Chubb. Offensive line was decimated. A lot of injuries. This Browns team, which has gotten healthier over the 6 games that Watson has played, 95 total points, 15.8 points a game. And keep in mind, Ian and everybody back there and everybody watching, those 95 points include 14 points from the defense this year, which is 81 total points by the offense, which means that the Browns, on offense at least, are averaging less than 14 points a game. If the other team scores more than 13 points, the Browns can't win that game. That's where the offense is in 2024. This is where we sit at in 2024. Now, Ian, can you play the clip from Kevin Stefanski's press conference?
The offensive struggles you guys have been having, and the playoff hopes kind of shrinking. Just why not try Jameis as a potential spark that you're looking for?
Yeah, I think it's just important that we continue to do everything we can to play good, sound football. I think there were moments of that, obviously, yesterday. I think Deshaun gives us the best chance to win, continues to give us the best chance to win, and we need to play really good offensive football at his position and really at every position to be successful on Sunday.
The best chance to win. Ian, can you put those stats back up? from the tweet, the best chance to win. And we are getting this on offense. We're getting worse than a practice squad emergency quarterback and a 5th-round rookie. By the way, that includes that game that DTR had with like 2 hours of prep versus Baltimore. Even if you include that game, they're better, significantly better than what Deshaun Watson and this offense has produced in 2024. And I'm getting told this is the Browns' best chance to win. An offense that makes it so literally, unless there is defensive intervention, if the defense gives up more than 13 points, they can't win a game. This is the offense, the quarterback of that offense that you tell me gives the Browns the best chance to win. And we're just talking about PJ Walker. What about Jacoby Brissett and Joe Flacco? Well, those two, and if we could keep this image up so people can see the statistical categories I'm pulling from. Joe Flacco and Jacoby Brissett, if you combine their stats and put it into one 17-game sample, they average 21.6 first downs a game. If you take their total yards, 6,085, they average 380 yards a game. Expected points, they were at plus 64. And if we're talking about total points per game, they were at 25.3. Even 2023 Deshaun Watson, who's much better than the 2024 version, averaged almost 27 points a game when he was the quarterback of the offense. That's why the Browns were able to win games last year. That's why they can't win games this year. You literally need the team to hold everybody under 14 points to win a football game. That is the Browns' only chance to win because the quarterback is playing so poorly. Because the quarterback is playing so poorly, the offense is so poor. And Kevin's on record saying that that's the guy that gives the team the best chance to win. And that's not a quote that's going to die anytime soon. That's a quote that people are going to get madder and madder about as every week goes on. Right now, the Browns are trying to get Browns fans to accept that Deshaun Watson is going to start, no matter how much people can obviously see it doesn't make sense. And now, honestly, I feel like I'm being gaslit because you could have said a lot for why Deshaun's starting. I'm not expecting Kevin Stefanski to go out there and completely throw Deshaun Watson under the bus or even bench him super publicly. What I am expecting is him to try to keep it as neutral as possible. It's possible. Yeah, Deshaun Watson's our guy. We're going to work around that. You know, this is the guy we have. We're going to work with what we have at the starting quarterback position. We're going to do our best to support the offense, no matter who's playing quarterback. But Deshaun Watson gives us the best chance to win. It's a bold-faced lie. It's a bold-faced lie. We've seen PJ Walker and DTR produce at higher levels than Deshaun Watson. It feels at this point unfair to compare what Joe Flacco and what Jacoby Brissett did in this offense to what Deshaun Watson is doing at this point. Like, that's where we've gotten. Two journeyman quarterbacks. It's unfair to compare them because they're just so much better. And you're telling me with a straight face, this is the guy that gives the Cleveland Browns the best chance to win. And I know that a lot of people watching are not going to find that believable because it's not believable that this is what gives the Browns the best chance to win. It's not believable to us watching at home, to those of us who still go out their way to spend their money to watch the Browns in the stadium. It's not believable to the people in that locker room. it ain't even believable to Kevin Stefanski. Because, you know, these stats I just pulled up, these splits, Kevin's aware of them. Kevin was there when Jacoby Brissett was running the offense. Kevin was there when Joe Flacco was running the offense. We all saw how he felt when DTR and PJ were there. We saw that he clearly wasn't happy. There's no way he looks at this and thinks, oh, yeah, it's better. But somehow, either because of the pressure of Deshaun Watson's contract or because of Jimmy Haslam, Kevin Stefanski has deluded himself into thinking that actually gives him the best chance to win. And I honestly do think that Kevin has twisted himself into thinking that that gives him the best chance to win. I'm not saying Kevin has the unilateral power to bench a $230 million guaranteed quarterback and end the era of Deshaun Watson. But he does have the power of indifference on his side. He could be indifferent about this. He could refuse to comment about it. He can not answer the question, right? We know Kevin's really good at not answering the question. So when he does answer a question plainly, well, that's a choice. That's a choice that Kevin makes. We've seen Kevin squirm out of these questions a million times when it's PJ Walker or DTR they're asking to get benched or some other quarterback. He squirm out of it. He doesn't say that guy gives. He never said DTR gives us the best chance to win. But he's saying that with Watson. I don't know what he could be seeing that can make him believe it. I understand Watson went, 10 of 11 at the end of last game? But did you watch how he went 10 of 11? Wasn't the most impressive thing in the world. And I'm not even saying it wasn't impressive because he wasn't making tight window throws. I'm saying it wasn't impressive because he just took advantage of coverage bust. It is what it is. I'm glad he threw those balls to move the ball to get the offense some excitement and give us some hope he can win. But it wasn't anything that's going to encourage me to think that 2020 Deshaun Watson's on the way. No, we've seen Watson do this before and stink it up. This is part of the package with Deshaun Watson. He's not good. He stinks. We got more stats on this, right? To show about where Deshaun Watson is and how it's obviously holding back this offense. I mean, I don't know what this offense is capable of. I feel like that's fair to say. I don't know how much he's holding them back, but I know it's obvious that Deshaun Watson is holding back this offense. And Kevin Stefanski isn't enabling it. And that's something that's not going to be forgotten. Because if the Browns go 2 and whatever, 3 and whatever, people are going to look at Kevin Stefanski and say, hey, I was going to give you a pass on this whole quarterback thing, but this is the guy you said gives us the best chance to win. And if you have the quarterback that you feel like gives you the best chance to win, and the best you could do is 3 wins, shouldn't you get fired? Isn't that the logic that I have to conclude when you say something like that? You're inevitably tying yourself down to Deshaun Watson. Because unless Deshaun Watson turns it around, you're going to look like a fool. Because you tied yourself to the ship, this sinking ship. The title of this video is Titanic 24, story about the Cleveland Browns. Because that's what this is. This is a story of a failure that is on one hand unpredictable, but in hindsight, inevitable. We are watching this team slowly but surely crash into that iceberg. And you know what's the most tragic thing about a shipwreck in the Titanic story? It's not that the ship went down and that people died, even though that's very, very unfortunate. Obviously a tragedy. It's that this thing went down so slowly, but yet so inevitably. In the Watson era is the Titanic. It is going down slowly, and it is going down inevitably. We are just watching this gigantic ship that is the $230 million contract of Deshaun Watson the career of Deshaun Watson go up and slowly sink into the water. And the most tragic thing about the Titanic isn't the loss of the ship itself. That's secondary. It's just material. It's the tragedy that it brought people down with it, that people lost their lives with it. And again, if we're taking this in the football context, I'm watching the ship of Deshaun Watson's career sink. And I think Kevin Stefanski is at the top of the shipwreck conducting music. About to be the next victim to this whole thing. This is unfortunate because I think Kevin's a good coach. I think Kevin has kind of doubled down on his pride here because I don't think this is a Jimmy Haslam creation. I don't think Jimmy Haslam is handing him notes for the press conference and saying, say this. You said that because you wanted to say that. And why you want to say that is because you have pride. Also, another thing we got to acknowledge here, what's making this whole situation worse for us as fans is probably what's making the team more stubborn about making a move on this. Because Baker Mayfield is playing really good. And Baker Mayfield and Deshaun Watson are going to be related. Their careers are going to be intertwined. Because on the surface, it looks like the Browns chose Deshaun Watson over Baker Mayfield. That's certainly how it's going to play out. Now, the truth of that is questionable. It's not really exactly how it happened, but that's going to be the narrative that gets pushed, especially if Baker Mayfield continues to play well. And the Browns are aware of that. So every time Baker Mayfield just doesn't look like the worst quarterback in the NFL, they know that they're going to look foolish if Deshaun Watson doesn't turn it around. So they want Deshaun Watson to turn it around. And Deshaun Watson can't turn it around on the bench. So any type of hope that they get, any 10 for 10 stretch, any decent throw that they get from Deshaun Watson is going to give them enough copium to keep going on this thing. But it is just copium. It should not continue. But the pressure of Baker's success being juxtaposed to the Browns' failure, right? I saw that one clip on Fox. They played it like a little what if, and the Browns are preparing for a big game, and they're going to be 5-1 with Baker Mayfield at quarterback, and it's going to be a big game versus the Eagles, and we're just excited, and look what we missed out on. And we're doing that last year when the team went 11-6, but they're doing it now, okay? And that is something that lives in the Browns' heads right now. Every game Baker Mayfield looks really good. They know they're going to hear about it. And the only way for them in their minds to rectify the situation is to get the most out of Deshaun Watson. I don't even think that's the best way to rectify it, to be honest with you. I think it would be better if you just turned the page, went on to something new, and started winning games again. Because like I said, they didn't talk about this in 2021. Not 2021, in 2023. The reason they didn't talk about it in 2023 is because the Browns are winning games. So who cares what Baker Mayfield's doing? Baker Mayfield made the Pro Bowl last year. Nobody really cared that much because the Browns are winning games. That's what the Browns have to do if they want to avoid all of this. They got to win games. But now they're caught up in trying to prove a point about Watson. Make no mistake about it, man. The only reason Deshaun Watson is starting as your quarterback for the Cleveland Browns is pride. Because the people who made this decision, the people who pounded the table for this decision, the people who okayed a giant contract for this decision, and I know people are trying to not include the people they like in this scenario, those people are trying to protect their pride. And the only way in their minds to protect their pride is to make sure this Deshaun Watson thing works. Only thing is, and this feels like the clip from Breaking Bad, but y'all remember when Hank got killed in Breaking? Well, spoiler warning. My bad. Some people still watching Breaking Bad, but spoiler warning for Breaking Bad. So if you've not finished Breaking Bad, get off real quick. I'll be done with this whole point in 2 minutes. But in Breaking Bad, there's a scene where Hank, Walt's brother, is basically about to get executed by the Colombian cartel. And Walt's trying to beg and bargain and try to fix this mistake that he created that put his brother in this situation. And Hank just looks at him and goes, "You're smart, but you're too dumb to realize that that dude already made his mind up. My life's been over since you made that mistake. It's only been a matter of time." And then bam, Hank dies. Deshaun Watson's a much similar situation. That Deshaun Watson era ended at the end of that Washington Commanders game. There's no coming back from that. There's no having a big career turnaround. That's it. For him specifically too. Maybe somebody else who was younger or more well-liked would be able to come back from that. But that's it. That's death knell. That's wraps. It's wraps for your NFL career. You put a game like that up. That's wraps for your career, especially as a superstar quarterback. And since you are a superstar quarterback with baggage that's not very good, probably not going to have a long career as a backup if you have a career as a backup. So the chance of him hanging around, getting another opportunity for a resurgence, it's not very likely. This is where the Browns are. We have a clip here from Pro Football Talk that I would like to put on screen and react to, if we can get that.
There was an interesting tweet from Mitchell Schwartz, former All-Pro offensive lineman who played for the Chiefs and before that the Browns. Right. Because Kevin Stefanski was asked yesterday, again, will you stick with Deshaun Watson? The answer, one word, yes. Said Schwartz on Twitter X, I still call it Twitter, and I'm just going to
Mama named her Twitter, I'm
just
calling
gonna
her
forget
Twitter.
that the guy who owns the current hellscape wants it to be called X. All the more reason to call it Twitter. It's incredibly shitty to do this to the rest of the team. Sorry, London. Joel Bitonio is out there every week playing through who knows what and has to wreck his body when they have no chance of being good because of the quarterback. Myles Garrett is playing in pain every week. I feel for everyone else there. There is a certain point where it's just, what are we doing and why are we doing it? And it's not the coach's call. It's all the way up to ownership. Just like with the Jets, the ownership starts at the dysfunction starts at the top, and this contract is a result of an ownership decision. They're sticking with him because of ownership, and they're just stuck.
They're stuck.
And I admire the Browns players for going out there and busting their asses every week when they're playing with one hand tied behind their back.
Seriously. I mean, especially the defense, the way they still fly around, physical. Right. I mean, yeah, they let up a few plays, but again, I think they also look at it like, hey, if we don't make the plays, we got no chance to win the game, so we got to take some chances there. And I feel like Jim Schwartz probably feels that pressure as well. But yes, it's another game. I don't know what to say. It's horrible. It's ugly to watch. And it's an offense that, with Kevin Stefanski, it's a good offense, but it's dependent on the run game. And it's never been able to be totally dependent on just pass game and the quarterback.
So first thing, I want to challenge the narrative that it's just Jimmy. Obviously, Jimmy is a part of this, but I think it is being in denial to think that Kevin has nothing to do with it and that Andrew Berry has nothing to do with this, because it's only being said now when it's convenient for it to not be on Andrew Berry or Kevin Stefanski. But the truth is, Andrew Berry was out there defending this decision in 2020 when the Browns, not 2020, in 2022, when the Browns made it. They were defending the trade and justifying it, and they were excited about the move and talked about it excitingly when the move was made. Same thing with Kevin Stefanski. Kevin was excited about what Deshaun could bring to the offense. He didn't seem like a coach doing something against his will when they made the move before they knew what he would look like on the field in 2022. I mean, this is a guy Kevin's gone out of his way to call his franchise quarterback, a superstar quarterback. Same thing with Andrew Berry. To me, that doesn't sound like a regime doing stuff against their will. Hell, even what we saw with the quote today doesn't feel like a team doing something against their will. I know it's easy and clean to make this whole narrative about big old dysfunctional Jimmy Haslam making these poor guys do something they didn't want to. But why didn't they feel like hostages in 2022 if they're hostages right now? Why didn't they feel like they were hostages in 2023 if they're hostages right now? How are they only hostages when the quarterback is putting up some of the worst numbers we've ever seen a quarterback put up? How are they only now hostages? It seems very convenient to me. I think the truth is exactly what it looks like. They were sick of Baker Mayfield, and I agree with why they were sick of Baker Mayfield. They wanted to upgrade. If you look out there in the upgrade market, Deshaun was the best quarterback available. They did their due diligence and saw what was available along with 14 other teams, and then they got down to the final 3. They put the offer in. They put the deal in. Deshaun chose them after some muddling around, and boom. That's how Deshaun Watson came here. But it didn't feel like they were doing something against their will when they were recruiting Deshaun Watson. It didn't feel like they were doing something against their will when they landed Deshaun Watson. And for the last 2 years, it hasn't felt like this regime was doing something against their will. So me suddenly believing now that they're doing something against their will and that Jimmy Haslam is forcing them to make this decision, it seems a bit far-fetched in my opinion. I know what people want to believe about this so that Kevin and AB can be clean from this. But that's not true. They made this decision because in 2022, Deshaun Watson looked like a massive upgrade over Baker Mayfield. It wasn't a crazy decision when it was made. Deshaun Watson was really good in 2020 and really good in 2019. It was a decision that some people thought was cynical, but applauded. Thought that it would work out in the football field. The question was, would it be worth it? Would it feel good for your fans to be good for this? That's why they made the move. They weren't forced to make this move. They made this move. And I'm willing to say, hey, Deshaun Watson was nothing like what you thought you would get. You got sold a lemon. You wanted to buy the lemon because you thought it was a Lamborghini, right? You thought it was a fancy car at a decent enough price. And you were like, okay, let me get that car. That's what we need to succeed. Ended up being a lemon. Okay, damn, it's a lemon. That's what it is. But if you tell me after you buy the lemon, well, you know, I ain't actually want to buy the lemon, I'm going to start looking at you like Hugh Jackson, the king of Cap, because it sounds like Cap. Like, tell me in any other situation that somebody started copping a plea this late after being with the program for the last 2 years, if it wouldn't sound like copping a plea. Like, if it wouldn't sound like Cap, it's Cap. Like, I don't believe it. And I think part of the reason Deshaun Watson's still starting is because these guys wanted Deshaun Watson in the first place. Let's continue the clip.
Way, right? So I've never looked at it quite that way, but with their offensive line being banged up and no Nick Chubb, they can't do that. And now it puts more of a spotlight on the passing game and Deshaun Watson. And it's just... yeah, it's bad decisions. It's holding the ball. It's underwhelming throws. I mean, again, like you'll see, and maybe cut to the wide shot here. Like I look at things like this. Most quarterbacks sit here and throw the ball, and they're upright, and their arm comes through. And this, you heard me in the viewing room yesterday. I was telling he has throws in the game where he looks like he is throwing off a mound. He throws the ball and ends up in a bent-over, followed-through position like he just threw a fastball off a mound in the 9th inning of a Yankees game. And that's just, there's things there that it doesn't look right psyche. It doesn't look right physically. There's nothing to be positive that's positive about the Cleveland offense right now.
And maybe I should have retitled this video The New Space Jam, because that's what this team is right now. They're the new Space Jam movie. Right? You remember in Space Jam, the original Space Jam, not the one with LeBron in it, the new legacy one. I'm talking about the original Space Jam. Remember how the aliens snuck up into the basketball players and they took their ball and they somehow sucked all the talent from these players? That's what Deshaun Watson looks like out there in 2024. Again, they were sold a lemon. I don't think anybody knew that Deshaun Watson was a lemon when they sold him to us. I talk to people in Houston about Deshaun Watson all the time, and they are just shocked. They believed Deshaun Watson was next up. Like, they didn't see this coming. I know people try to act like people saw it coming. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody saw this level of fall off coming for Deshaun Watson. If somebody does, they're lying. This claims they were lying, right? Nobody saw this level of fall off. And I think there's a level of grace that you give because this fall off happened, right? And there was a level of grace I'm willing to give. Like, I know that in my mind, Kevin was just as big as part of this as Jimmy and everybody else. They make unilateral decisions as a group. And I'm willing to give grace on this because it was such a big fall off. Nobody could have predicted this. Right? If Deshaun Watson was just as good as advertised, and then he looked this bad. Well, not then he looked this bad, but if Deshaun Watson was just as good as advertised and it didn't make the Browns better, okay, now everybody's got to go. But Deshaun Watson looking like a completely different person the second he gets traded to Cleveland, I mean, like, that's not really something you can predict. Where I do hold the Browns accountable for trading for Deshaun Watson is once you realize that's the case, you got to move on from it. And I understand the first year he was coming back off the 700 days. You only played 6 games. It didn't make sense to pull the cord then. That of course, you're going to give that another year. And in 2023, he only played really 5 games. And in those 5 games, he was 5-1. The team was scoring 27 points a game. Okay, I understand with continuing. But this stretch of games is not just bad. If this were regular bad, I would be on here saying we got to see what Watson does the whole season. He's just having a rough patch. But this isn't regular bad. This is historically bad. This is some of the worst quarterback play this franchise has ever seen. And think about the scope of that comment. We're talking about a franchise who has seen the most bad quarterbacks, the most bad quarterback play, the longest duration of bad quarterback play. And we have nothing we can compare this to in a negative light. When it's that bad for 6 games, you have to pull the plug. And throwing Deshaun Watson into this game against the Cincinnati Bengals at home, where it's not going to be a friendly environment, where the fans are going to be hilariously upset or worse, indifferent. Because honestly, that's the biggest fear for this team, is that the fan base is indifferent. People just don't care if the team wins or loses anymore because they just want this to be over with. And you're bringing that to Cleveland Browns Stadium on a Sunday at 1 o'clock after people spent 3 hours in the Muni lot commiserating about how that guy sucks. And you think that's going to be a pleasant environment? You think the Browns are going to be hyped up to play in that environment? I mean, the only thing saving Deshaun Watson is that Nick Chubb can't be on the field without him, because we're not going to boo Nick Chubb. But the second Deshaun Watson starts throwing them ducks and that offense don't move, they're going to boo him. And again, maybe Nick Chubb can be the saving grace. But again, he's going to play limited snaps. I mean, if I didn't know more, I would think that the Browns are setting him up to fail. And I don't even understand setting him up to fail anymore. The case has been made. If your whole point was let's make him play this way so he can get benched, the case has been made for 2 weeks, brother. If this is some kind of elaborate ploy by Kevin Stefanski to force a benching of Deshaun Watson, I mean, it would have been done a couple weeks ago, because all you needed to bench Deshaun Watson was the Commanders game. We wouldn't still be out here doing this. Give me 1 second here. I think my capture card just froze. So I'm going to have to reboot my audio. If you could put some comments on the screen while my system reboots. But yeah, sorry about that. Maybe my capture card is horrified of this whole thing as well. We're all good, chat. Give me some thumbs up if we got audio again. Then we'll continue. We are back. All right, we're back. Awesome. Yeah, and I think it's unfortunate that guys like Kevin are going to go down with this and choosing to go down with this. And I think that distinction needs to be made clear because, look, Kevin's a good coach. He's going to go somewhere, at worst, be somebody's offensive coordinator, get another shot at being a head coach. And I think he's going to learn from these lessons and become a great head coach somewhere else. But he's got to untie himself from this. He's got to. And I fear that it might be too far. Like he might have dug himself in too far to come back from this whole Watson thing. That's my biggest fear about this, that you're going to lose some talented folk and, you're not going to be able to give them a chance to be able to learn from this mistake because they decide to dig into the mistake way too deep. I mean, literally the same exact story going on with Baker Mayfield, right? Baker made the mistake of not getting the surgery for his throwing shoulder. And instead of just realizing that mistake at this point of the season in 2021 and getting the surgery and saying, okay, yeah, I was too hurt, my bad. Let me put my pride aside and get that surgery. Instead of doing that, what Baker do? Play and continue to play. And it made us have to evaluate him as a non-injured player because he kept insisting he wasn't injured, right? And that's what we're going to have to do with Kevin. We're going to have to insist that this is the offense you want to run because you're insisting this is the best player to play this offense. Now we got to throw you in there with that because you chose that. And the conclusion is going to become inevitable when you have to do that. And then you're going to get to a point where you're going to make a foolish, prideful decision, like maybe telling the team you're not going to play anymore during a press conference instead of like behind closed doors. And that's going to make the team not want to have you on the team anymore. And then you're going to be mad at the team. And then bridges burnt, never can cross again. That is the dangerous path that Kevin Stefanski just set himself on for Deshaun Watson in 2024. Do we have those stats of what Deshaun Watson is doing and this offense is doing in 2024 right now to put on screen, Ian? Because I would love to see it. It's a very lovely graphic. It is mind-blowing, the choices that the Browns are making in Berea. It's mind-blowing. Look at this stuff, man. 13.5 offensive points a game. 13.5, folks. 19.2 third down rate. 19.2. The Browns are 1 in 5. Like 1 in every 5 third downs they'll convert. Awful. 5.2 yards per pass attempts. Not rushing attempts. That'd be a good number for rushing attempts. A decent one. Pass attempts is a horrible number. Wow, I didn't know about this one. This is shockingly bad. 1 touchdown in the past 29 drives in 0 20-point plus games. Like the basic stock over and under for a football game is like 38.5, right? That's when Vegas has no idea what's going to go on. 38.5. That assumes that one team scores 20. It's not rare that a football team puts up 21 points. It's not a rare thing. The Browns have not scored 20 points once in this game, in this season. And this isn't like the Eric Mangini Browns. This is a team with an offensive head coach, a 2-time coach of the year, who won coach of the year in Cleveland for his work in Cleveland as recently as last year. This is an offense with an expensive quarterback, an expensive offensive line, some expensive wide receivers, and an expensive tight end. And they're doing this because the quarterback stinks. And that is the dude. That's the guy that this regime just told everybody watching gives you the best chance to win. How do you take that seriously? Like, this thing's got to end sooner than later. And if it doesn't, it's going to keep dragging people down with it. That's where we're at with the Browns season. It's not about how many games the Browns are going to win anymore. It's about how you're going to manage the fallout of the end of the Deshaun Watson era. Because I promise you, he's not going to start in 2025. We're going to have a weird situation. Either he gets cut, which I think is unlikely now how the cap hits are spread, but he's probably going to be asked to stay on the team but not join in team activities. It's going to be awkward, slightly, kind of like how it was for him in 2021. But this is it. And right now we're talking about the fallout. Right now we're talking about who's going to go down with him, who's going to make themselves a casualty with him. The only guy who has given Deshaun Watson a cosign on this team is the guy who runs the ball. And probably he likes Deshaun Watson being out there. Because when Deshaun Watson's out there, you have no choice but to run the ball. Because he stinks. And this is all pride, I think, forcing the Browns in this spot. And I saw some interesting comments when I had to pause the stream out real quick to fix my capture card. Would you mind putting some of those back up? How can you say play calling is horrible when Watson is making the wrong read? Nobody's saying that, though. You're arguing against a position nobody made, or at least I didn't make. The play calling is fine. The coaching is fine. But this isn't about Kevin Stefanski's ability to coach. This isn't about Kevin Stefanski's ability to play call. He's fine as a play caller. He's fine as a head coach. Where Kevin Stefanski fails at right now is recognizing how bad the situation is at quarterback and the consequences of continuing to run said bad quarterback out. Like you said, if Watson is making the wrong read and he's not running the offense properly, why is he still in the game? And I agree with you. Watson is making the wrong read. But if Kevin continues to make the decision to keep Watson out there, or at least to defend decision publicly to keep Watson out there when he clearly is not good, then that falls on Kevin Stefanski. Because you got to make the decision to not play a player who stinks. I mean, we would understand this with literally any other position, with literally any other coach. If Greg Newsome was getting cooked 24/7 and Jim Schwartz was refusing to bench him, you would be furious. You'd be furious, not even at Greg Newsome anymore. You'd be furious that Jim Schwartz keeps putting him out there. But when it comes to quarterback, we act like a position change or a player change can't do nothing. When it has. The Browns with literally any quarterback have been better. And it's for that reason right there. Watson's making the wrong read. Okay, we'll put a quarterback in there who's capable of making the right read. That's my whole point. This ain't got nothing to do with Kevin's ability to coach. I think Kevin's a good coach. It's got everything to do with his ability to manage. And like, even if this is a Jimmy Haslam thing, you got to manage that. You got to make an argument to him that is convincing that he should not be out there. And at the very least, the best case scenario is that Jimmy Haslam forced him to say he's the best chance to win. I don't see why he would do that, but that's the best case scenario, right? If you are able to be coerced into saying that against your will, You might not have the backbone to do this job. Like, there's no scenario in which that coming out of his mouth is a good thing. I'm not here mad at Kevin saying he should be fired because of his play calling. I'm saying he should be fired because of now it appears he's enabling the continuance of this Deshaun Watson stuff. Let's get another one up. What if Chris Sims say about the Browns not, what in the world, audibling at the line of scrimmage is true? That's a big deal. Brother, they're running plays that have only one read right now. You notice that they ran a bunch of screens, a bunch of one route concepts. They don't trust him to do anything. And like, I don't understand how you get to the points where you're building that offense and you don't just say to yourself, bench him. I don't know how you can build that part of your offense out and then try to convince us this dude gives us the best chance to win. You can't tell that lie. We know you don't believe it. We know it's a lie. It's a bold-faced lie. I don't think Kevin Stefanski believes that Deshaun Watson is the best option. I think he wants to believe that Deshaun Watson is the best option. And that's the problem. Let's get it going again. Let's see what else we got here. If we get a top 5 pick and a quarterback, move on from Watson, unload a lot of overpaid dead weight on offense, reload in free agency, this team is competitive again next year. That's the thing. As miserable as it is right now, I mean, we could be at a completely different place next year. Like, think about it like this. As fast as we went from the Browns going 11-6 to potentially 6-11, is just as fast as we could go from 6-11 to 11-6. So, yes, it stinks that we're a little miserable right now. Yes, it stinks that we're not very happy about where the Browns are right now. Yes, it stinks that we feel this way about the team again. But it doesn't have to mean that we're going to go into another 20-year period of absolute anarchy and trash. It just means that this particular era of the team, when it comes to Deshaun Watson, that's over. It's time to move on to the next one. And just make your next one the best one. A lot of teams have maneuvered out of it. Hey, Trey Lance was one of the worst quarterback trades of all time. You never hear about it. Why? Because they pivoted right into Brock Purdy. Remember how much people were trashing the Jared Goff trade? Now you don't hear a single critic about the Jared Goff trade. See what I mean? It could change in an instant. Nobody's going to care about Baker Mayfield if the Browns draft a quarterback, that quarterback becomes a franchise quarterback, and the Browns end up being good for the next 10 years. Nobody's going to care about that story. The only way that story really carries weight if the Browns stay at this level for the next 20 years. But if the Browns get a good quarterback next year, nobody cares. Just like nobody cared in 2023 when the team was 11-6. So as bad as all this stuff seems, it's not permanent. You could turn it around and fix it if you win enough games. The question is, are you going to do what you need to do to get to that point? And it's obvious Deshaun Watson is the dead weight dragging this team down. Now, you got to figure out what else is dragging this team down, because it's not only Deshaun dragging the team out, but once you get rid of the heaviest anchor, you get to evaluate what else everything weighs on this team. You feel me? We got time for a couple more. Manimal says no one has a crystal ball to see a future. Took a big swing, missed badly, but got to keep making swings at quarterback despite the huge failure of Watson. That's my absolute point here, right? Now, I don't know if I'm there yet. I'm not going to get there yet with any draft prospect until after the Senior Bowl. I try to make it a point to not fall in love while I'm watching TV copy of a football player, especially in college. You need to see the film. You need to see these players play in real life. I'm going to go to the Senior Bowl, watch these guys. Then I'll have a better feel for the quarterbacks in this draft class. But if the Browns end that process and think to themselves that there is a franchise quarterback within reach, whether it be Jalen Milroe, Cam Ward, Shador Sanders, Curtis Rourke, whoever you want to add in there. If the Browns feel that way and they're in range, and maybe they got to trade a pick, or maybe you got to pair a player with a pick or something like that to move up, you do that. You make another swing, because you're not going to get a franchise quarterback by sitting on your hands and praying that it happens. You're not going to fall into it. Some teams do have that luck of falling into it. We aren't going to be that fortunate, especially if we have to get rid of our coach or anything else along with that. Hopefully, I'm wrong about Kevin going down with the Titanic. I don't feel like I'm going to be wrong, but hopefully I'm wrong, because I do think he's a good coach. I just hope he jettisons his pride to get on the right side of this one soon. But yeah, I want them to still take a big swing and get the guy that they want. Not like hope that somebody emerges to save them from this situation, but like truly, if you think this guy is a franchise quarterback, not will be, is a franchise quarterback, then you do what you got to do to take that player. But don't settle for 15 because you might be able to get somebody that you think might be able to be like Kirk Cousins. That is always a disaster, right? Just get the guy that you want and don't settle for anything else. That is my advice for the next quarterback that the Browns get. Don't try to fix somebody else's broken project. Don't try to get something on the cheap. No. Just focus in on what you think your next opportunity is to get a franchise quarterback and get that guy. That's it. That's truly it. Let's get one more in. Cavs teams have always been disciplined. It's been quite the opposite this season. Could the demoralizing effects of inept quarterback be a factor in the overall sloppiness, or is it on coaching? I think a lot of this is you have a lot of new coaches in there for the first year on offense, especially, right? Like they brought in a lot of coaches. I know the only coach we ever talk about getting moved out is Bill Callahan, which, by the way, if you ever looked at the Tennessee Titans, they aren't doing well in that category that Bill Callahan is supposed to be the wizard of. So I don't think a lot of this is just Bill Callahan being gone. I think a lot of this is just you have a lot of new coaches installing a lot of new things and a lot of players doing a lot of new things because they weren't necessarily brought in to do the stuff that this offense does. They were brought in to do the stuff that Kevin does. And I think that's leading to a lot of the sloppiness. You also have to add in that they didn't get to practice as a unit much, even throughout the year. They haven't been able to practice as a unit. Just look at the Browns injury report list every time it comes out and the amount of people not practicing every week. And it's no surprise that they're going to be this sloppy because they're not practicing, because they're injured. You know, they're not doing team drills. So the people you practice with aren't necessarily the people who are going to be out there. So when you're running in the game, you're running it for the first time together as a unit in the game. And it looks like it. I think that has a lot to do with it. And that's the note I'm going to leave on. CTG, appreciate the comment. If there is something I want to leave on here, it is that point I kind of touched on. Yeah, this situation is just as bad as everybody says it is. But it doesn't mean that this is what the team is going to be for the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Things can change. The expectation for next year changes too, because next year you're probably not going to have Super Bowl ambitions. So you're going to be happier with certain records that you might not be happy with now because your expectations were higher. But just as fast as the Browns season went from hoping that they win a Super Bowl to hoping that they go 8-9 or 9-8, is just as fast as this situation could change for the Browns as far as their outlook for the future. They have a ton of young, talented players under contract. They have some veterans that they can offload for some decent draft picks if need be. They have assets at hand. They have their first-round picks back. The Browns are not going to be doomed for long term if they manage this situation well and get out of this Deshaun Watson situation and handle it with tact and smoothness. But they got to do that. If they handle this well, we could be talking about a whole different world in 2025 and 26. But I'm Quincy Carrier. This has been Quincy Carrier Live. Y'all get ready for Fred and Barry. I'm out.